All right, guys, this is the last section of this unit. So let's skip over that warm-up problem. So here we're going to kind of be working backwards. Given the graph, how can we find the equation? Okay, so let's talk about the different pieces here. So the C portion right here told us about our up or down movement or our vertical shift. Okay, the D told us about our horizontal shift, so the right or left movement. This B dictated what happened with our period, and the A dealt with our amplitude. Okay, so we're going to start to piece this all together. So I'm going to give you a couple steps, okay, that you should follow, and then I'll go through those steps for this specific graph. So first of all, you want to figure out, do you have a sine or a cosine graph? Okay, so in this, when you look at the shape of this, remember I had said in the other video that if it has the shape of like a snake, I would do a sine. If it has the shape of like a cup, we got a cosine. Okay, so this would be a sine. Okay, then you want to figure out, is it positive or negative? So when I say positive or negative, like this would be a positive sine graph. Okay, a negative sine graph would be the reflection of that. This would be a positive cosine graph. A negative would be the reflection of that. So when you look at this, this is a positive sine graph. Okay, then you want to talk about the amplitude. So we're going to find the amplitude by marking where the center of the graph occurs and counting how many units from that center line to the peak. So if you look, the center line is at 2 and this peak is at -1, so this is 3 units. This should be the same, 3 units, 2 to 5. So our amplitude is 3. Okay? Then we want to talk about the vertical shift. It doesn't really matter the order of some of these pieces also. Okay, so the vertical shift would be the up or down movement. Well, wherever that center line moved, that's your vertical shift. So in this one, it went up 2. Okay, then let's talk about our horizontal shift. Okay, horizontal shift is the right or left movement. So I just gave you one period of this move to the right, however many units. And we'll talk about if they give you more of it, how you can mark it. So if you look, this was moved to the right pi over 2. Okay, and then the last piece that I'm going to talk about here is our period. So how quickly does this repeat? So this, if it starts at pi over 2, okay, and it ends at 3 pi over 2, take that difference. Okay, so 3 pi over 2 minus pi over 2 would just be pi. So the period here is pi. Okay, so your biggest x minus smallest x. Okay, so now let's use all of that to piece together what our equation would be, okay, in terms of where all these pieces would fall. Okay, so we know we have a sine graph. Oops, get rid of that x, sorry. So we know we have a sine graph. We know that it's positive, so this piece right here would be a positive. The amplitude is 3, so put a 3 out front of the sine. Okay, it was moved up 2, so that's 2. Okay, it was moved right pi over 2, so we would have x minus pi over 2 on the inside. Now, to find the b value, we need to do a little bit more work. So we know to find our period before, we said that it was 2 pi divided by b, and that gave you the period. Well, we have the answer now. We have that the period's pi. We have to work backwards to find the b. So we can simply do a little cross multiplication here. So 2 pi equals pi b. Let's divide by pi, and we get that b simply 2. So that's the value that you put out front there. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, so here I already have the pieces laid out. Once again, the order that you do them in really doesn't matter. So first, is it a sine or a cosine graph? So when you look at the shape, I think, oh, it has a cup, so that's a cosine. It's opening upwards, so that would be a positive. Okay. Next, let's talk about the amplitude. So we got to find the center line. Now, this graph's the grids are kind of small, so we got to be very careful. So look, this low is down at -7, and this high is up at 1. So the middle from -7 to 1, so that's 8 units. So the middle would be 4 units away from each. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So here would be my middle. So that really also just told me what my amplitude is. It's 4 units each way. So my amplitude is 4. Okay. Let's do the vertical shift next. So that also kind of shows me my vertical shift. That center line was moved down 3, so it'd be a -3. Okay, let's talk about the horizontal shift. So that's the left or right movement. So this was moved left pi over 2, because that's where that guy starts, and then the period. So we need to figure out how long it took to repeat. So if I take 7 pi over 2 minus a negative pi over 2, okay, the length of this, if you do that math, would really be 8 pi over 2, which is 4 pi. So that tells me the period, but we still have to find the b value. So 2 pi over b, oops, is equal to the period of 4 pi. Cross multiply. When you divide by that 4 pi, you get that b is simply 1/2. All right, let's piece it all together. Sorry. So this is a cosine graph. It's opening positive. Okay. And it might be helpful, sorry, I didn't write this here, what each piece is. So the amplitude is 4, so we put a 4 out front there. My vertical shift, right, my vertical shift was down 3, so -3. Some people put the -3 on the very, very end or out front. It really doesn't matter. Your horizontal shift, it was moved left pi over 2, so that would be a plus pi over 2 in with the x, and then that b we found to be 1/2. All right, let's do one more. So this is what I was saying before. So they give you more than one period, so you need to kind of figure out where you want to start and stop this. So let's start this here, and then where does it start to repeat? Here. Oh, shoot. Here. Okay? So when you look at this, I'm going to kind of ignore all of that part now. So let's see. When I see this, I see a sine graph. I see that snake there. Now, technically, you could break it and use a different section, and you could use cosine. Just know that. Okay, there's more than one answer. If you think about it, sine and cosine look very similar. They're just shifted from each other. Oh God, that's awful. Okay, this is the sine graph, and it keeps going. And this is the cosine graph, and it keeps going. So they're really similar. It's just a matter of where you pick where each one starts. Okay, so I'm going to do sine with this. And when I see that this goes down and then up, this would actually be a negative sign. All right, let's find that center line. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units from the center line to the peak. So my amplitude is 5. Okay, my vertical shift, I can see from that center line, is moved up 3. And my horizontal shift is right pi over 2. All right, so let's figure out the period. So 3 pi over 2, okay, minus pi over 2 tells me that my period is pi. Okay, so from here, let's take 2 pi divided by b equal to pi. Do your cross multiplication, and you should get that b is simply 2. Okay, so I have a sine graph that is negative. Okay, the amplitude is 5. It was moved up 3. Now it's right pi over 2, so minus pi over 2, and the b value is 2. Okay. I'm going to circle a couple for you to do and then name that graph file then as well. You guys are doing well. Have a good one.